Welcome back to Living Resonance. I'm Munifa, and today we're tuning into the lunar cycle so you can let it bring you to your natural rhythms for a powerful voice, action and flow, and a legacy in harmony with the current frequencies. So, we're talking about the lunar phase of the full moon in Pisces, which is Gene Key 55 and Human Design Gate 55. We're experiencing the themes of victimization and freedom. And freedom. The genius of feeling stuck. So if you've ever felt that way, you're in the right room. The secret to freedom is what we're going to be talking about today. One of my biggest ideals is freedom. But that's because of the fact that I often don't feel free. So here we're talking about how to turn that pursuit of freedom into the feeling of freedom. And my secret for turning limitation into action. So as teachers and leaders, we're always learning so we can understand the patterns of people that interrupt their power. Leaders are here to empower, right? So as we're at line 5 in the Gene Keys, so the line, if you've ever seen a Gene Keys chart profile, if not, use the free link down below, then you'll know that each of the little circles, each of the spheres has lines attached to them. Each key has a line that's attached to your personal profile, right? So those are like kind of the subsection of the section of what you're talking about. And in the purpose sphere, line 5 is in the Gene Keys tells us that the shadow of leadership is being a victim. Okay? The voice of leadership is muted without understanding how we go from being a victim to being a leader. And so that's what we're here to do. Gene Key 55 is echoing that in the shadow of victimization, how do we go from the ultimate victimhood to the ultimate empowerment, to freedom, true freedom? To empower others, we have to recognize true freedom. So here we are, we're talking about Gene Key 55. Richard Rudd calls it the dragonfly's dream in the chapter. If you know anything about Gene Keys, if you know anything about numerology, you know that double number means double something, right? These are anchors in the continuum of creation that means something beyond even what we're talking about today. If I got to everything, we would be here forever, and we're not doing that, okay? We shouldn't be here too long, because I'm trying to do this a little more succinctly lately. So we're in the victimization in that shadow is basically being a victim of circumstance, treating joy as an effect instead of a cause. So when we feel bad, we look outside of ourselves for what's causing it, that's the trap. That's the trap. And it's a trap of our own longing, what we hope to happen versus what we are afraid will happen, right? So the nature of this energy, of this frequency, is mistaking freedom. So it's basically looking for freedom and mistaking kind of where to look for it. Like for me, we keep thinking we have that having the things, getting to the goal, having money, success, recognition, being on the right spiritual path, having the right teacher, pursuing spirituality with all our heart and passion and all the things is going to make life good, right? So bring us the feeling of that we want, right? So we become victims of that drama of not feeling what we want to feel, mistaking the ups and downs of emotional highs and lows, like getting the perfect job, finding the perfect partner, having the perfect house, being enlightened, and we romanticize that. We turn it into stories of life about what is the heights of freedom and why we're not in them, in that height, in freedom. Right? So at its core, we're going to get a nice quote here from Richard Rudd. At its core, the 55th shadow conceals the longing of consciousness to return to its own unity, although this most commonly expressed as it is as the romantic longing for the perfect soulmate, right? So this is why he's talking about we romanticize this idea that once I have that perfect thing, once the external is perfect, then I will feel free or I will feel good, right? So programming partner, as you know, this is pretty much the opposition if you're looking at a Western chart. This is the 59th key of the shadow of dishonesty. The gift here is intimacy, but can you imagine how in that dishonesty is how we're creating our own victimization? We're telling the story that may be a fact, but it's not the truth of how we have to or are in relationship to what's happening on the external, right? And so this is what leaders notice. This is what leaders notice. So to detect victimization, I'm going to help you out here. I'm not going to leave you out there trying to figure out what that means. When you're repressing this energy and frequency, it looks like complaining, all right? Complaining is an unconscious mindset in which one makes oneself the central victim within one's own drama. So that's from our poet, Richard Rudd here, right? Complaining is an unconscious mindset in which one makes oneself the central victim within one's own drama. So we have to tell a specific story from an external cause to be able to do that. And what that does is it strengthens the illusion that life is hard, that everything is hard. It's too hard to be able to have what and be where we want, right? So on the reacting to this energy and frequency, then it looks like blaming. Okay, when we externalize complaints to someone or something else, it's somebody else's fault. If something was different, then I would have what I want, right? So a quote here is, when we blame another, we fire an arrow that removes self-responsibility for our situation. In this sense, we invest aspects of ourselves within other beings, giving away our true power and presence, our literal life energy, when we are doing this, blaming and complaining, really, because complaining disperses the energy and blaming sends the energy to who you're talking to. Where focus goes, right? So where focus goes, energy flows, if you haven't heard that one. And what are the possibilities? How do we move out of this shadow into the possibility of the gift? If you're experiencing complaining, if you're doing the blaming, then you have also the potential to live that same energy in its dynamic force, in its gift, right? And you can be the embodiment of that, because you can be the embodiment of the other side of the frequency. Then you're already on the frequency. You just need to vibe up, right? So in the Gene Keys, it looks like understanding dawning within you, inside you, at the level of pure being. So this is really a felt thing. The understanding that you have become the unwitting victim of your own unconscious belief patterns. Whatever story you can tell is based on what you already think you know, based on what you believe, right? So really, it's kind of cool. Those things that we're complaining about and blaming are actually telling us why we are stuck in the pattern of continuing to see this perspective. And I don't know about you, I do get confused with that. So a lot of times I'm going to tell you how I do it when I'm trying to remove myself out into this next possibility of the gift, right? So another important part here, we're talking about this Aquarian age. This is line 6 actually in the transit. So it is from the whole perspective, the community, everybody wins is the line 6 and its gift, right? So here we're understanding that being into that transition, you start to shift from I to we. I actually wrote a note about this. We even have a line 6 in this full moon Pisces on the Pacific coast, indicating that this is about everyone being served in this energy. Perfect for the onset of the Aquarian age, wouldn't you say? And so in this lunar cycle of the genius and gift of freedom, it's available for everyone to let it help you release any stories that say you are not free, right? So in that gift, if we're living the gift, here are a couple of those signs. Freedom is the ability to be who we are and be supported and loved and serve without changing who we are. And in the gift of freedom, there is an end to the idea of the emotions belonging to someone. So how I feel belongs to me. Emotions will be known in the future by Richard Rudd's chapter is that they will be known as waves of energy, not something that you can own, but something that is moving through us. Okay? And to everyone. And we will be freed from the shadow state and become a creative conduit of life force itself. So that is kind of the new human. So if you're following astrology, you understand that this is our opportunity to become a whole new version of humanity, right? This is the furthering of that opportunity. And in this next version, we'll understand that the shadow state is something that can become positive, creative life force. It is already. We just have to use it that way, right? So there's also an idea in the Dream Keep book of sacred marriages. Oh, I messed that up. Sorry, guys. There's also an idea in the book, I don't know where the dream part came from, of sacred marriages. Okay? So it's basically couples experiencing enlightenment together, with each other, because of each other, with each other, in the both. Because it's in the relationship to each other when we start seeing the whole, the possibility, regardless of whose fault it is that we're in a circumstance, that is a shift into higher vibration. And if you've been in a relationship, you realize that that's part of what makes you feel so good in a relationship, is that you come to these realizations because you're together, right? And then you realize this is somebody I can grow with. This is somebody I can have a positive life with, right? So we're going to switch over to Karen Curry Parker, Quantum Human Design here, so we can talk a little human design. She calls the 55th gate faith. So the 55th gate is in the emotion center of the quantum human design body graft, right? And in the full moon, this partial lunar eclipse, it's time to let go of what undermines faith, which is fear, doubt, and control, right? So what's hard about that? What's challenging about that? I got a quote here. True faith means aligning with our worthiness to be supported. It's hard to align with our worthiness to be supported. We've created a lot of stories as to why we're not being supported and why we don't think we will be supported. We got plenty of reasons, beliefs about why that is or will be, right? So here we're seeing between these two expressions, between the 55th wisdom of Gene Keys and quantum human design, that in order to feel free, you must believe in your worthiness to be supported. And ultimately, we're talking embodied trust here. And Karen Curry Parker defines that as willingness to release control, take inspired action, and allow our faith to magnetize aligned opportunities and resources. It's powerful, right? So this is the opportunity, the possibility in this energy. So if we're living only in the complaints of what is not yet happening, right, then we might need to do a little bit of self-leadership, right? If it's unbalanced, here's some things to look out for. Stirring up fear in yourself or in others, doubt, emotional volatility, being just off the wall in their emotional response. Like, I don't know what that means. You know, I've never been emotionally responsive at all. Yeah. So what I'm seeing in this information that we brought, that I brought, is that you can't complain and empower others at the same time. A lot of times when I'm complaining I'm thinking that I can think my way to a solution. I'm going to figure out everything that's wrong so that I can find all the reasons why I can make it right? So when I do this and when we do this, we're convincing ourselves that we're being productive. We're on our way to success if we're figuring out why it went wrong, right? But the truth is, we're using our brilliance to keep us from feeling the pain of failure or overwhelm. And it could just be me. It could just be me, but it's something to think about, right? The fun part is, this is why self-leadership often leads to empowering others. So we can shift ourselves out of that victimization. We can show others how to shift each other out of victimization, right? And when we catch ourselves, we can help others correct their patterns. So my secret for turning limitation into action, this is how I turn the pursuit of freedom into feeling free. I ask myself, why don't I feel free? Free to be myself, free to do what I want, free to build what I want to build. I use the Omans method, which is my method for nervous system regulation, which is in the vocal section of these videos in YouTube. I use my method to bring me back to center, to feel good first. And then I ask myself, what can I do? And if I need a reminder, I pull up my favorite quote from Arthur Ashe. Start where you are, use what you have, do what you can. You can start today. It might be a small step, but every step counts. Every step counts. When I ask these questions to myself of why don't I feel free, when I ask these questions to my clients about why don't you feel free, right? And I ask with curiosity, I'm like really interested. Then it pulls them right out of victim mode, because they start to see that it shows them their own story, right? And it reveals their inner leader. So that's what we use. We use that realization within themselves. That's how they self-lead. That's how they're going to lead the people that they get to shift their experience of the world. And we anchor that into what they are working on to be that change in the world. So we create right from that anchor of feelingness and truth from our own wisdom. And that's what I hope for you guys. So I do have a couple journal questions. Let me know if these help. If these help, or if you're just like, I think I'm good with the transit information. I will understand. So first question, where in my life am I trying to force clarity or control rather than allowing space for divine timing to unfold? It's a good indicator that I'm not trusting that I'm being supported, right? Next question, what would it feel like to move forward without having all the answers, but with the full faith that I will be guided? So you might not know everything right now, but you could do something toward it and find out on the way. It's possible. And in what ways am I being invited to dream bigger? And do I believe I am worthy of receiving what I truly desire? We always got to ask ourselves this question every now and again, because we can convince ourselves of many a thing. So I hope this helps. If you want to check your own profile, the free link is in the section below. If you want to get connected, my freebies below. And those questions, I want to make sure you know, those are from Karen Curry Parker's Quantum Human Design. So have fun. I will see you guys on the next transit video.